Test.
Yes, there you go.
Oh, okay.
That's better.
Thank you, Chair. At this time, I would like to conduct an oral roll call and request that each commissioner respond with present when their name is called. Commissioner Becerra,
Present.
Commissioner Davis,
Present.
Commissioner Faber, Vice Chair Norwood,
Present.
Chair Coss.
Present.
Let the record show 4 members are present with Commissioner Faber absent.
Thank you. At this time, Commissioner Basara will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Does anyone wish to reorder or add to tonight's agenda? Okay. At this time, I'm opening public comment period. I now invite members of the public to address the Planning Commission. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes, speaking once, both on and off agenda items. All questions should be directed through the presiding officer. This is your time to speak uninterrupted. If you are in attendance, please fill out a speaker card and submit it to the recording administrator before the close of public comment period. Once recognized, you will advance to the podium, state your name and the subject matter you wish to discuss. If you're participating via Zoom, select the raise hand icon in Zoom before the close of the public comment period. Once recognized, you will receive a request to unmute, state your name and the subject matter you wish to discuss. So at this time, I do have public comment cards, and first we'll recognize Elizabeth Martinez.
So I also want to just Chair Paulette, sorry.
Yes.
It's been a long week.
No worries.
Just that if anybody's here for the public hearing, there will also be a public comment period during the public hearing.
Yes.
So if you are to speak, if you're to speak on an item or want to speak on an item that is not the public hearing, then now is the time to speak at public comment. However, if you are here to speak on the public hearing, which is item number 1, then you should wait until the public hearing, that item is opened.
Thank you. That wasn't on my notes. Thank you.
So I'm here for number 2. Is
Okay.
this okay?
Yeah, if she can speak on item 2 now, correct?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
or I'm sorry.
Nope.
I'm
Oh.
looking. Item 2, I'm sorry, it is.
Oh, item 2 is the public, yes.
Yeah, sorry, item 2 is the public
So
hearing.
right now it's people that want to speak on something other than the public hearing.
Yes,
Correct.
right now it's
Okay.
anything, any items that do not pertain to
Okay.
anything on the agenda.
No, you'll come back. You'll have your 3 minutes, I promise, when it's public hearing time. Okay, let's have is it Stephen Thomas? Steve Thomas. Are you all for number and also Cindy Holland, are you also for number 2? Okay, all right. Okay. So then at this time, I will close public comment period and we will, oh, thank you. Is there anybody on Zoom that wants to comment at this time?
No.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I will close public comment period and we will reopen it at a later time. Right now, I would like to invite Community Development Director Jeff Kugel and Assistant City Attorney Danny Elshire to provide their reports.
No report at this time.
Same here, thanks.
Okay, now we are getting to item number 2, an ordinance amending the Glendora Municipal Code and official zoning map pursuant to the 2021-2029 General Plan Housing Element, Programs 8 and 9, file number PLN 230003. At this time, I declare the public hearing open. So now I know we have people that wish to speak on this. But first, we're going to have Principal Planner Hans Friedel present the staff report.
Good evening, Chair and Commission. I'm here tonight to present an ordinance amending the Glendora Municipal Code, specifically the zoning code and the Arrow Highway and Route 66 specific plans, and updating the official zoning map to implement primarily programs 8 and 9 of the adopted housing element. Let's see if I'm going the right way here with the PowerPoint. Okay, background. So by way of some background, the council adopted the 6-cycle housing element in December of 2022. The housing element includes goals and policies to address Glendora's housing needs and required obligations. These goals and policies are implemented through a series of programs that comprise the specific actions the city will take to implement the housing element. The adopted housing element is yet to be certified by the state's Department of Housing and Community Development. HCD has sent the city a letter stating they will provide the city with compliance for the housing element if programs 8 and 9 are completed, which is what we're here to implement tonight. HCD sent the city a follow-up letter in May, just basically last month, inquiring about the status and asking for an update on our timeline to accomplish programs 8 and 9. And that's from their housing accountability unit. We sent them a follow-up letter via the city manager who wrote the letter that we are in the process of implementing 8 and 9, and that process starts with tonight's public hearing. Okay, background, some more background here. The housing element also includes 16 programs comprising a variety of actions to streamline, reduce barriers to, and generally help Glendora meet its regional housing needs assessment numbers. Here's just sort of a screen grab, if you will, from the current housing element showing program 8, but there's, several pages of it that outline all the different subtasks under those different 16 programs that I referred to.
I can't see that. Is this going to be available to us afterwards? We can't read it and it's kind of confusing. I don't even know if it's speaking our speakers. I have no idea. Actually, this
So-
actually is on the website. I
The
think.
entire, I can answer that too. The entire packet is on the website. Okay, so in terms of background, continuing with that, the programs requiring immediate attention are 8 and 9. And also I'll mention that the adopted housing element is on our website too, on the planning page. So as I mentioned, the programs requiring immediate attention are 8 and 9. Program 8 provides adequate residential sites inventory and monitoring of no net loss. And program 9 is by right approval for projects with 20% affordable units. Planning Commission and City Council committed to the action items associated with these programs during the joint meeting and by adopting the housing element. This effort tonight also ties into some of the 31 action items associated with program 16 to facilitate housing production. Here's another screen grab from our adopted housing element showing some of those 16 programs. Specifically, this one ties into action item number 30, which is to establish minimum density for housing development and housing sites at 80% of the maximum of the zone. And so that's for our housing sites inventory. So for example, for a 30 dwelling unit per acre site, all projects must be at least 25 dwelling units per acre. This addresses comments from the state on enforcing no net loss, whereby projects could be hypothetically proposed far below maximum densities. Not everybody who proposes a housing or project on one of those sites goes for that, wants to hit that target density. The city's obligatory regional housing needs assessment. Let me move to the next slide here. Allocates our RENA numbers by income category. And Glendora, just so what this is all about, was assigned roughly 2,000, a little over 2,000 new housing units. So we, by income category, are committed to providing zoning and sites to accommodate those roughly that number of housing units. Okay, so in terms of required actions, program 8, this takes us to the sort of required actions that we're implementing those programs. We are to develop a procedure to monitor the development of vacant and non-vacant sites in the sites inventory and ensure sites are available to meet the remaining RENA allocation by income category. This also includes providing information on available sites and development incentives to interested developers and property owners. So required actions, this is a screen grab from the city's website showing information that we are now making available to developers and property owners. So this is just some of the stuff we're complying with. It's based on those conditions in that letter and what we're required to do to get our housing element certified. So we put some stuff on our website. This is on the planning page. And it's, again, information on incentives and some of the things that we're doing now and some things, some other handouts and sort of permit processing things that we've handouts for developers and for citizens that we put on our website. Next slide here. This is a sort of the meat and potatoes of the ordinance is required action 2. The city will increase permitted densities in the BG zoning district of the Route 66 specific plan from 20 dwelling units per acre and 2 stories to 30 dwelling units per acre and 3 stories. The city will increase the land area in the proposal zone for housing in the Route 66 specific plan transit corridor mixed use subdistrict by restoring land previously rezoned from mixed use to commercial. The city will increase density in the Arrow Highway specific plan from 25 dwelling units per acre and 2 to 3 stories to 30 dwelling units per acre and 3 stories. And sites identified for rezoning must allow 100% residential use and require residential use to occupy at least 50% of the floor area if it's proposed as a mixed use project. And I'll kind of just briefly toggle between these 2 maps. So they show the specific subzone areas of Arrow Highway and Route 66, which we're looking at Route 66 now, that are proposed for rezoning changes and additional residential density. Importantly, they're also good examples, and here's the Arrow Highway one, of our noticing. So these lines around these sites, which is the proposed rezoning, and BG stands for Barranca Gateway, by the way. This is where we sent public notice letters per our requirement in our code to all property owners within 2,000 feet of these areas being proposed for additional zoning density. The areas themselves are just sort of the rectangles. I don't have a pointer, but the ones with the crosshatch on them. And here's the portions of the Arrow Highway again, and that sort of noticing radius. This was roughly 6,000 different property owners that were sent notices, which is probably the biggest, definitely the biggest one that I've done since it's happened since I've been here. I'll give kind of a brief, since we're on this slide and talking about that, I've received probably roughly 20 calls, and including some emails to our citizen comment portal, mostly inquiring about the proposal. One was opposed based on concerns over adequate infrastructure. One call was in support. Every other one that I received was just asking questions, essentially. So we have members of the public here to speak tonight. We can go back to those maps too if we want to kind of clarify anything. I've included some tables showing the changes which are in the ordinance. We can come back to these if there's specific questions, but it goes basically through each of the zoning sub-districts, and it's talking about where the minimum was added, or if there was a minimum, basically the minimums were added to it, and some of those changes by district. So here's the again, we can come back to that. This is just the official zoning map of Glendora showing Route 66 and Arrow Highway and those corridor zones. All right, another required action here is going to be Program 9, which is Program 9 of the housing element. And this is by right approval for projects with 20% affordable units. This would be citywide, so it's not confined to just Arrow Highway or Route 66. Pursuant to California Government Code Section 65583 and 65583.2, Subdivision C, a residential development with at least 20% housing units affordable to lower income households shall be allowed by right when A, the housing site has been included in a previous housing element revision planning period, or B, the housing site is subject to rezoning required for compliance in the current planning period, and the required rezoning has not been completed before the statutory deadline. So the statutory deadline for what we're doing tonight was October of 2021. So essentially the previous and current housing sites, if a developer were to propose a project with 20% affordable units, would receive a by right or non-discretionary process through the city. So in terms of action items for Program 9, the city's included language in the proposed ordinance that revises the Glendora Municipal Code section 2103 130I to require by right approval of housing developments that include 20% of units as affordable as defined in current and previous RENA sites. So that basically concludes my presentation, and staff is recommending that Planning Commission recommend to council adoption of the ordinance. And here's the language. Thank you. I'm here to help with answer questions.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I'm going to invite members of the public to address the commission to provide public testimony. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes speaking once on this public hearing item. This is your time to speak uninterrupted. Once recognized, advance to the podium, state your name, and all questions should be directed through the presiding officers. Can I get the public comment cards? Oh, thank you. All right. So I think now's the time for Elizabeth Martinez. Thank you. Yes.
So good evening. I'm Elizabeth Martinez. I'm a resident of the Charter Oak area, which would be directly impacted by your Arrow Highway route. And I'm up here to voice my concern. Like you've had public comments already about the infrastructure. So not only are you having these additional dwellings put in there, but what's going to happen to our school districts in that area? Are you going to also increase that as well, along with the additional traffic that we would be seeing on there is what I'm really concerned about. Looking at your ordinances with affordable housing in California is kind of an oxymoron, but what do you consider really affordable housing? Is this, are these for sale type dwellings? Are they rental units? Unfortunately, the area is seeing an increase in crime, and I'm concerned about that as well. So, you know, I've lived in the area in this house for over 40 years. And just this year alone, we've had, for the first time, people taking mail out of our mailboxes. It's never happened in the 47 years that we've been here. We've got a great community. I love Glendora. I'm up here all the time. And I certainly appreciate the opportunity to speak on this. So if I could ask the question, what is low income? And are these really for rent units or are they for purchase units?
They will provide responses after.
Okay,
Go ahead.
Thank you.
so do I get a new 3 minutes? No, I'm
You've got a minute. You've got a minute remaining.
I do.
Yeah.
I think I'm done. Okay. Okay. Thank
Thank
you.
you. All right. And just so you know, we'll be kind of addressing some of these issues after the public comment period. So next speaker is it Stephen Thomas? Yes.
Speak on the way up. Resident since '89. I'm a member of the board of the Glendora Garden Forest HOA. And I sent a note to my some of the residents how we may be concerned about the increase in density, especially with we've got 7 units right up to the wall to this former strawberry field, and they're goodbye sunlight. If you're building 3-story homes or units, it's going to impact them majorly. Right now it's 20 units per acre, 30 units per acre. It's like a plus 18 units times 3. It's going to increase the density. So the concern is that it will impact Glendora Garden Forest HOA. I'm pretty sure Strawberry Lane too, their HOA. And you are impacting people who live there, not other businesses on Route 66. So that's all I have is I appeal to you not to increase the density in the strawberry field or on this vacant lot. That's it. Questions? Good, thanks.
Thank you very much. And is it Cindy Holland? Okay.
Hi, I'm Cindy Holland and I live in Charter Oak, and we're really concerned about the issue between Valley Center and Glendora. There's homes, there's small businesses. These businesses have suffered so much because of COVID. So we've lost businesses there. We're losing people there. The crime is going up. If we build in that area of Bonnie Cove, where Vaughn's was, corner of Bonnie Cove and Arrow Highway, if we put anything in there as far as apartments, we're gonna have the extra traffic on Arrow Highway and around the corner, because we have 3 communities within 1 mile that have affordable housing. We have a little over 9,000 people in Charter Oak, and 352 of those people live in affordable units. And I got this off the web pages, so that could be, who knows? Okay, and Glendora's got over 51,000 people and only 103 units. Now we're gonna put more people on the border of Charter Oak. That's more traffic, that's more kids. Those kids are gonna be going to Royal Oak and Charter Oak schools. Because you know, and I know, they're not gonna bus them to Glendora. That's not gonna happen. We have enough trouble as it is with the crime, with the parking. The apartments that are built only get 1 parking spot. The people park on the street. In Charter Oak and Bonnie Cove in that area, people park all along the streets because they cannot park in their apartments. The same way with the apartments that are on Sunflower and Cienega. They park on Lyman. It's all residential areas. We're getting squeezed out. It's just not right. And you have those people on Arrow Highway, the mobile home parks. You have the little apartments, you have the little homes. Yes, we have some vacancies. Yes, we have some vacant lots. And I wish we could do more with it. But this is just how it is right now. Obviously they can't lease them out. But all the parking on Arrow High for that new construction, if it's on Bonnie Cove and Arrow Highway, that's San Dimas Police or Sheriff, excuse me. Glendora will not go there. Glendora Police will go to the property. Yes, but anything from the curb, from the street, anything happens there, that's going to be San Dimas Sheriff's Department.
If you could speak into the mic, please.
Pardon me?
If you could speak into the mic.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I'm getting riled up, but I'm sorry. But no, there's just so much to consider. And we've had more crime. Someone tried to break into my house, my neighbor's house. We have people stealing mail out of the mailboxes. Charter Oak has never been like this. And I've lived there and I'm older. So, I mean, I've lived there for a really long time. My parents bought the first house in Charter Oak with no telephone poles. And now I'm living in that home. It was a beautiful community growing up, but we've lost so much and I don't want us to lose more. My time's up. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that's it. Are there any additional cards?
No.
Okay.
I didn't fill out my phone number and email. Do you need that on there or can I just fill out my name and the days?
Yeah, if you'd like to speak, that card has to come in now, please. Yeah, just put your name on it and that's fine. Okay. Okay. Okay, so Danette?
Mhm.
Okay, go Danette Holland. Okay,
Yes.
go ahead.
Hi, my name's Danette Holland. I wasn't planning on to speak, so it's going to go off the cuff. I'm trying to retain my temper. I'm very irritated about this. It seems like Charter Oak District has been the go-to for affordable housing.
Mhm.
We have numerous buildings in Charter Oak and Covina District. We're in the county. We get it. You're in the county, you can park on the street, you could do whatever you want to us because we're not the city. And it's got to stop. We got people behind me that are concerned about their homes now at Strawberry Lanes and the condos there. It seems like you went all the way to the edge of Glendora and went, well, we can almost dump it on Charter Oak. All they have to do is take 2 steps out. Now they're on Arrow Highway and they're in Charter Oak. I can't believe, are any of the homes up here being affected by this? Anything above Route 66, Foothill, Sierra Madre? It's like, if you want affordable housing, we already have some affordable housing in our area because we're not as affluent as some of the areas around us. And we're putting more affordable housing there. We've got affordable housing on Bonnie Cove, on Cienega, and on Covina Boulevard. We had problems with the gangs. So the one on Cienega, they're starting to switch that over to seniors only. because one's on Bonnie Cove. They were tagging all the brick walls. This is an unfortunate situation, but this was a fact. When they started changing it over to seniors at one, we didn't have as much problem. But it just seems like everything is an apartment building, and higher and blocking people's views in their homes where they've lived there their whole life. And yes, I've been in Charter Oak my whole life. That is my sister. I live down the street from her. And like we said, 1954, my dad started building those houses on those whole 3 blocks and we all moved into them. And it just seems to me, it just is always shoving it right down in the same area. I'm not trying to sound harsh, but it's upsetting. And what's it going to do to our community around us, where we walk, where we can park, where we can drive? We've got the libraries there. It's gotten to the point where I just don't understand where are we going to put all these people in apartment complexes? And it's just, I don't know, it's difficult. And I don't mean to sound so frustrated, but it's my home and I live there. And it's like everywhere we're going, it's like going to just be another building. And I just find it very interesting that they're just pushing it to the limit all the time. And it seems to be the Covina, Charter Oak, LA County area. We're getting it all. And maybe I should have known when you bought in the county, it makes a difference of what your choices are. And that's unfortunate, but that's it.
Thank you. Are there any other comment cards? Are there any speakers on Zoom?
No, no request to provide a public comment. Yes.
You would have to, yeah, get her a card. She'd have to fill out a card.
There are yellow cards right here at the podium.
You can fill out the card after you speak if you like, but we do have to have, if you want to speak, you can, but we have to have a card with your name on it because that becomes part of the public record. But yeah, if you want to speak and then, fill it out and give it to us, that's fine too.
An old lady, but I've lived in Charter Oak for almost 40 years.
I'm sorry, can you tell us your name, please?
Yolanda Villasenor,
Okay, go ahead.
and my husband and I, we've lived in Charter Oak for about 45 years. And I've always felt that Charter Oak is like the orphan of LA County. And anything that the other cities around us don't like, drop it in our lap. And I'm not prepared for this. So that's actually the only thing I want to say, because I see a lot of empty lots. I see homes that are empty, run down. Nobody lives in them. They've been there for years and nobody does anything about it. And it's very frustrating, just like the ladies there say. It's absolutely ridiculous how Charter Oak has put up with this for so many years. And that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Please
Please-
complete that card.
Please be sure to hand in your card when you're finished. Okay. All right, do we have any additional Zoom speakers?
There's no request for public comment on Zoom.
Okay, yes.
Just a reminder to please complete your card
My
prior
name
to speaking.
is David Nwachukwu, and I have a question. I live here in Glendora. We just moved here about a year ago, maybe a year and 6 months. So my question is, did you guys provide the limits, the justification for the limits, the extreme and the other side of the density that you're planning to, or the changes you're planning to make?
So responses will be provided after.
Excuse me?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, so that's the question I have. If somebody can give us more like a scientific justification for the changes you're planning to make. So you have an extreme where you say, okay, this zoning will be for, let's say, 50 units. And then the opposing side said it will be for 10 units. And then how did you decide where to zero in on the change? That's my question. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
And I will fill out the card.
Okay. All right. Do we have one more? Bring up your card, please, if you have to hand in your card. Okay, and you're Alejandra Vachon?
Vachon, yeah.
Vachon, I'm sorry, Alejandra Vachon. Go ahead.
Yes, this is the first time I'm gonna participate in something like this. But my house is over there on Barranca and Route 66, and I live in that cul-de-sac. And seems like the map seems like they're gonna have buildings over there just by my house. And I I bought this house in Glendora because I like to see the view, and I'm a little bit like this, but I like to see the view. I like to my neighborhood. I don't like it too crowded, and we have a lot of kids around. And I don't know how the traffic is going to affect me. I think I have a lot of questions about how it's going to look like and how it's going to affect me if I want to sell my home. It's going to affect the value. I just have a lot of questions that this just came all of a sudden, and it just came, and I don't know exactly how it's going to look like, how it's going to affect me, how it's going to affect the schools, what kind of living is going to be there. It's going to be for the elderly, it's going to be for families. So I think I just have more questions, and I don't think that I'm going to get all the answers today, but I think we need more time for this. When we got this notice of the public notice, it was just like, it was a piece of mail that I almost missed. And it seems like a lot of neighbors say that they didn't get it. So I exactly don't know how you address this email to us, because I almost missed it. My husband was the one that saw it. And because I saw it, and then I talked with the neighbors, but this is happening, and I don't know exactly if everybody was informed about this. And I'd like to know how it really is going to affect me. I know that if it's low income, how it's going to affect the schools, and if Glendora has enough schools for all these families, if our kids is going to be, they're going to have enough room for those. And what's going on? I want Glendora to keep looking pretty, to keep looking with family homes, single homes. So all of these living apartments, I don't know if it's gonna be like nice and comfortable. I like changes, but I like to see good changes in which our homes gonna be like this. You're gonna retain the same value. I'm gonna live there. I don't know the construction how is gonna be. I have a pool, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, the construction is gonna be just by my house, just by the pool. So how is gonna affect me? Now, how long? How are I gonna sleep? I work. I have my work there. I work from home, and the construction is gonna be there. So I'm gonna be able to talk during my job. How the noise is gonna be? How long is gonna last? Do I need to find an office somewhere else because of all of this that's going on? So I don't know, and this is affect me. This affect me because my job. I work from home, and my house is just right there where the plans are for this construction. So I don't want it to affect my income or my work. So, and the noise. So I don't know how it's gonna be.
Okay, thank you for speaking. It looks like your time's up, but thank you for speaking tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for hearing.
Okay. Are there any other? It looks like there's one other. Okay.
I'm sorry. I came late. My name's Danny Garbe. And so since I'm late, I wasn't sure if these questions were asked before.
Go ahead.
Since it was saying zoning, I wanted to know, is already a plan in place? Are these buildings already going to be put up? And when you meant affordable housing, how affordable are we talking about? Again, she was concerned about her house value. And then the other question we had, can you define a little bit more when you mean streamlining? I don't know, again, I was late, but I just wanted to come up and ask those two questions because it said 2029, but I don't know if that's already a plan in motion, or are we waiting for someone to just buy those lots?
Okay, thank you. Okay, do we have any additional speakers on Zoom?
No additional speakers on Zoom.
Okay. So at this time, do we get any correspondence that needs to be incorporated?
There's no correspondence.
Okay. So at this time, I invite discussion and questions from commissioners, and then hopefully we'll also be answering some of the questions that I know the public has. And thank you all, the members of the public, for speaking. It's very important to hear your voices. So at this time, I'm going to ask Commissioner Basara if you have any discussion questions.
First of all, I would like to say that I feel what you're all feeling, because this is all of our community and we all are going to have to face what's being required of us by the state. So just saying that we're sympathetic to what everybody is saying. We all live in this community. With that, I think there were some really good questions that can be answered by staff. And if the staff can really address some of those things, like what is affordable housing? I think, you know, when that word comes up, it's like, oh, you know, it's a really bad word, but it also means just retired people or, you know, moms or, you know, retired police officers. It could be anybody, but I want staff to kind of explain that so that people understand what type of housing we're talking about a little bit. Other than that, I think maybe we'll come back and talk a little bit more about that.
Do you want to go ahead and, you were asking about what constitutes affordable housing?
Sure, I can answer that now or answer that when, okay. Generally speaking, affordable housing is defined by the income a household earns. And the state of California decides what an affordable or lower income bracket is. And as part of the city's planning for housing to serve, you know, all segments, all economic segments of the community, all cities in California are required as part of your housing element to plan for a certain amount of lower income housing. And so what typically a low income housing, I don't have all the numbers off the top of my head, but generally speaking, a low income, oh, here it is right here. Oh, is this, well, this isn't the, okay.
Those are the brackets.
These are the brackets. So it's not the actual income numbers. So the income, I think I remember it from memory that in the latest state release, a low income household is defined for, let's say, it's based on a percentage of the income relative to the income in the county. And it's based on household size. So if I do recall, if you are a household size of 4, low income is defined as a household size of if you are a household size of 4 of the household earning no more than I think 90,000 a year. That's in 2023. And it's a sliding scale. And so if housing for the lower income categories is provided, typically the way that works is that the city enters an agreement with the developer whereby a certain number or all of the units within that development are restricted to households based on your income and income based on housing size. And that's essentially how it works.
Okay, thank you.
I think something I'll add to that too was that there's a couple of different things going on here with this ordinance because it's implementing programs 8, 9, and one of the action items in 16. So it's the density change part for the Arrow Highway and Route 66 specific plans where we're proposing those density increases of 0.25 to 0.3 and of 3 stories when it was 2 stories before, et cetera. And those are dwelling units per acre, those numbers. That's not necessarily set aside for affordable housing or any class of housing. It's just general housing density units. So it's non-specific. It could be market rate. It could be some mix of affordable. It's hypothetical in its zoning, and it would be subject to the proposals we receive from a developer to do something. The by right stuff that was citywide, the by right approval of projects that propose 20% at least of their units as affordable, that would be a citywide thing. And that's part of the requirements in the state. And that's what Jeff was talking about.
Yeah, and
Thank you.
implementing requirement that is otherwise imposed on the city regardless. And so this is updating the city's land use zoning to comply with that requirement.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Davis, questions?
Actually, if staff could elaborate a little bit on the consequences for not following through on the state mandates that we're voting on tonight.
Yeah, that's a good question. The state of California, what we are doing tonight is a requirement of
A
state
la
law.
Huntington Beach and others who fought
Right.
it as well.
The state of California is, many people may have read in the newspaper and heard the discussion of the housing crisis, right? There's a housing crisis in California. And the state has determined that. And so what the state is doing about that is they are requiring cities in a more forceful way than in the past to do things like we're doing tonight. We're not the only city in California having to rezone property to increase density. Virtually every city around us is having to do something similar and is under the same requirements. If the city does not comply with the state law, and as Hans said, we've already got a letter from the state of California's their housing enforcement unit wanting to know when we were going to adopt these things, because the city's council's already committed to do these things. If we don't, the housing enforcement unit can turn this over to the state attorney general to prosecute the city for violation of the state housing law. Under the most extreme measures, if the city did not comply with the state housing law, the state could take over or basically eliminate the city's ability to approve or deny any housing whatsoever, aside from issuing a building permit. So we could lose our local authority to approve or deny any housing development in the most extreme cases. And you mentioned some cities that the state is subject to state lawsuits. Huntington Beach is the one that's been in the news the most. Also, the city of Claremont is being sued right now for noncompliance with the state housing law, and are also subject to a builder's remedy action right now as well.
And it's not going well for either of those cities, correct?
No, the courts have almost always sided with the state on these issues.
Yeah. Okay, so the takeaway from my question to you on that is our hands are largely tied. I sympathize with every single one of you. I do. We don't have a whole lot of choice in some of these zoning matters. I wish we had more. It really wasn't, this all occurred before I signed up. I'm glad I'm a part of it, but it's hard to be a part of it when your hands are tied sometimes too. It's almost thankless. A couple other questions. How many feet radius was it when they mailed out the notices?
2,000 feet. So just under a half mile from all of the, I can go back to the map here.
What did the packaging of those notices look like? A standard
Yeah, it's
city seal on the envelope, or?
Yeah, it's an envelope that says public notice on it. We use a third-party service, but we got proofs of the envelope. So if somebody has one, they'll hold it up. And then this is the notice itself here. So it's front and back, includes the map, description, and importantly, I'll add that it has the date, location of the meeting, what we're doing, and then links to the city's website where the packet and stuff is available. So you could download, our staff report and the ordinance, that sort of stuff.
Now, we've had numerous meetings on these topics in the past too, have we not?
Well, the housing element meetings.
The housing
Yeah,
element
there was a
meetings.
joint meeting back in April of, was it 2022?
Right.
And that was where our sort of programs and action items were outlined or agreed upon. Also mentioned too with the noticing, the notices are also posted at City Hall, put in the newspaper, that sort of stuff as well.
But the previous meeting notices didn't go out in the 2,000 square foot radius.
No, this is that's a local code requirement in Glendora. If housing density, some sort of zoning action is increasing housing density. So that's why that was the case for this.
I think it's important, the process to create the housing element, and there was a question about how we decided, where and what level of density we were going to adopt and where. So the state gives us a number. or actually the state gives the region a number, and then there's a regional planning agency called the Southern California Association of Governments that gives every city within that region a number. And that number was available to the city to start planning for the 21 to 29 housing element cycle back in around 2020. Maybe. And so at that point, the city kicked off the process. Believe it or not, the first meeting we had to kick off the planning process for the housing element was in November of 2020. Over 2021, if the Planning Commission will recall, we held a series of meetings to decide how we were going to meet that, that requirement of the state, that number, and that Planning Commission considered 3 alternatives that staff prepared. They all did largely revolve around the zoning on Route 66 and Arrow Highway, in large part because that is where the city had previously adopted specific plans that call for higher density housing. And so we were using those areas as ways to meet our planning requirement. And so that's how we ended up with that. But there were probably, about 5-6 meetings between the Planning Commission and City Council in preparation for adoption of the housing element. Notices like this one that were sent out were not a part of those meetings because this is a public hearing to adopt an ordinance. And so when an ordinance is being adopted versus just a meeting on discussion items, but we did publish that in other ways. An actual letter is required by the local code to be sent out. And when you are increasing residential density, the city is under its own code is required to notice all property owners within 2,000 feet of the properties that are being rezoned. State law only requires that you notice 300 feet. So, and the city only requires this kind of notice when you are increasing residential density. It doesn't require it when you're increasing commercial density, for example. It's only residential density. So that is why so many property owners were noticed both in Glendora and on the other side in the Charter Oak neighborhood, maybe even the city of Covina, as well as the city of San Dimas, would also have received some notices. So
You got one more question? Okay.
Yeah, and I just wanted to kind of point out, maybe you can elaborate on it a little bit. Just because it's zoned, it's being rezoned, and densities are being upped, does not necessarily mean that it will get built that way. Back to the 75, is it 75% or 90% density?
correct.
That is correct. And the minimum densities only apply to our regional or our housing sites. So there's like roughly 60 housing sites, and the ones that are in these corridors, that's what it would apply to. So that is right. So the other areas with these density increases here, yeah, on the tables, that's what the asterisk is in the table, which says, hey, it's got to be a housing site for the minimum density to apply. And so really most of this was increasing the maximum density. You know, for example, in the corridor, high density residential went from 25 to 30 dwelling units per acre.
And someone did ask about whether there were plans already approved for these units. And this is not approval of construction. This is simply the approval of an ordinance which allows a certain type of development to occur should the city receive an application from a developer. It is truly a planning document. What we're doing and like I said, every city is doing in California is every city has to make adjustments to its zoning regulations every 8 years to meet its requirement to be able to provide its fair share housing should it happen. So, you know, the city of Glendora, we have an allocation of over 2,000 units within the current housing cycle, the 21 to 29 housing cycle. You know, so the goal is to see that many units would be built, but I think it's questionable whether the market would provide that many units. We don't have any. We have a handful of applications currently for development on Arrow Highway. right now that we're processing. But it's not even close to the total amount that, could theoretically be developed. The city just has to be able to show the state, see, we're doing our fair share to solve the state's housing crisis. We are providing the zoning that could, in theory, allow the units that the state says it's need to accommodate its population. So
I've described it as hypothetical housing on the phone, and that's kind of what we're doing.
Yeah, and if the city doesn't, in the 8 years of the planning period, if it doesn't actually produce those houses, it's still in compliance with all its requirements. It's not in non-compliance with the state.
Thank you. Vice Chair Norwood.
Thank you. Appreciate everyone coming out. So being on the planning commission here for 6-7 years now, correct me if I'm wrong, but the density, wasn't the density at what we're currently going back to at one point? Didn't we reduce it 5 or 6 years ago?
correct.
Prior to this most current RENA requirement?
Correct. In 2017, the city reduced densities on Route 66. And so what we're doing tonight represents really a partial restoration of that reduction. We're not fully, restoring the density that was eliminated, but it's a partial restoration for Route 66.
So for Route 66, but we didn't reduce it on Arrow Highway at the time.
No, if you'll recall, so in 2017, there was a zoning amendment for Route 66 that reduced density. In 2018, the city adopted the Arrow Highway specific plan, which introduced new residential density. And this ordinance will increase that amount by a little bit in some areas. We'll go from maximums of 20 to 25 units to the acre on Arrow, which were adopted in 2018, to about 30 units to the acre on Arrow Highway.
And these are not the only areas that we are providing the state for that we might develop, not just low income, but multi-unit residential within the
Correct.
city.
Yeah, right. There are housing sites throughout the city, although the majority of housing sites, the largest area that we're telling the state that we're planning for housing is on Route 66 and Arrow Highway. I would also mention that at the same time, the County of Los Angeles itself, because we were following this on Arrow Highway, and I hear a lot of Charter Oak residents that there is an East San Gabriel Valley plan that includes the south part of Arrow Highway, where the county is planning for comparable densities, if not a little bit higher. I believe those residents should check with the county planning, but I believe they'll allow up to 4 stories on the south side, the county will. So we're a little bit below what the county, I believe, is planning for on the south side. But, in addition to those corridors, there are also housing sites that we've identified throughout the city as well.
Okay. And my last question is I'll have to come back to it, escape me for the second, but it was similar in the direction I was going with it. So, I remember now. So we have submitted documents to the state that at least during this process that we believed met the requirements. But it seems to me that the state still had issues with some of the documents that we presented and the zoning and the number of units. And we've had to keep massaging that to appease the state.
We did. We've had several back and forths with the draft housing element last year. The state did finally agree to what we've proposed. However, the recent letter said, well, under state law, we cannot certify your housing element. Certify meaning provide final approval until you take these actions to rezone and do a handful of other things that you've committed to do. So they're not at this point, no, they don't. And it's actually now it's state law the state legislature has every year, they adopt a series of laws. Many of those are directed to housing, and they're all making, they really want to hold cities more accountable to not being resistant to housing development, and to be more accommodating to housing development than they believe cities have been in the past. And the state policies come from a place that really in some ways attributes the lack of housing in the state, or the housing crisis, to cities.
Okay. And my last question is more of a statement too, but you feel free to chime in on it, that we as a planning commission, when you provided us those options, was A, B, and C, if I believe, and we went with a certain option that did increase density, city council chose another option that chose not to increase that density. And so it was the plan of the city councils, their discretion, not the original plans that we submitted to the state was not to increase density, but our hands have been kind of forced a little bit more throughout this process.
Yeah, the option that the planning commission recommended actually focused more density in higher concentrations, allowing up to 5-story buildings around the future Gold Line station, or future A line, I think they're calling it now, right? So right around Glendora and Route 66. So the plan that the commission recommended was to really have the focus of much of the density there. The council was concerned about the intensity of 5-story buildings anywhere in the city, and decided instead to spread the density out to wider areas, which is why we're having to rezone on Arrow Highway under the scenario that we're doing tonight.
Okay. So we have done our due diligence in terms of trying to meet the state's requirements and try to lessen the blow to the citizens of Glendora.
Right. And it's not easy. These are all very, very difficult decisions that, Glendora and every community in the entire state is having to make.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Well, I would like to say, first of all, to the members of the public, thank you for coming tonight. I think public input is so important and crucial in every decision. And we've actually had some discussion of these plans in our previous meetings, but thank you for coming tonight as well. I did take very copious notes while you were talking. One of the questions, and I understand somebody mentioned that, greater crime in around the Charter Oak area. And, I can tell you, unfortunately, that's happening all over the city, not necessarily just in the Charter Oak area. One of the things that I'm hoping is if we can get more affordable housing, hopefully some of our, our homeless population and that kind of thing will decrease as well. It would be my hope. But a couple of questions. Can you clarify, because I heard people talk about when the buildings go up, and I think right now, and I one of my fellow commissioners mentioned this, but right now we don't necessarily have plans for particular buildings on sites. We're simply saying these are sites that could be available, and a developer may come in and say, yes, I want that site, or no developer may come in and say, I want that site. Is that correct?
I can answer that. Yeah, what we're doing tonight is really not site specific at all. It's zoning districts and sub-districts. So we're talking, maybe if you want to think about it as like multiple sites and creating that framework where you could have a little bit taller, a little bit higher density, but it's not tied to a site specific development plan or a site specific project or a certain application or something like that.
And
It's
have we
simply zoning.
have we currently had a lot of requests or even like people saying, hey, I want to build this 3-story building, or have we had any type of inquiries regarding that so far?
Not associated with this process here.
Okay.
They do come, people come to the counter and we have calls and things like that.
Right, but
about
not
proposals.
necessarily regarding this particular plan.
Not this application tonight,
Okay.
this ordinance.
So as projects come in, somebody mentioned, infrastructure and traffic. As particular projects come in, they're evaluated for their effect on the infrastructure, their effect on traffic, those types of things. Is that so? If I came in and said, look, I want to build a 60-unit apartment complex, they have to go through a process, correct? I mean, can you maybe summarize for the public, like what do we do for individual projects when they come in to evaluate them in these areas?
Well, we have a development review process here at the city. So it's based on the sort of project size, scope, class, that sort of thing, you know, but it could be a development plan review for multifamily. You know, again, I'd be part of this, or again, it's, you know, if the question would be, does it have 20% affordable or not? You know, that it wouldn't be going to a public hearing if it did. You know, if it's a development plan review for like a multifamily, we are allowed to apply objective development standards to that multifamily development. So we have, you know, things in our code related to like off-street parking requirements. You know, so there's things in the zoning development standards and parameters such as height limits, setbacks, that sort of thing. You know, so all of that would come into play, and then it would be reviewed, you know, depending on if it had affordable component that met that threshold or not. It may go to a, you know, planning commission meeting for a recommendation to, you know, or, you know, for approval. And that's sort of, so we have that process. And then, you know, post entitlement, it goes through all sorts of, you know, there'd be inspections and building permits and, you know, safety stuff related to electrical and plumbing and all that mechanical stuff.
So I guess my point in asking that and for the public is that it doesn't necessarily mean that anybody that wants to come and build a structure can just build one. They have to go through the review process, at which time we're looking at how it affects traffic, those kinds of things.
Yeah, access,
Right.
site planning, all that sort of stuff. Yep, that's exactly correct.
Okay. I had one more question. I know we had a joint meeting with Planning Commission and City Council, which I found incredibly helpful. And a lot of the things that were discussed there were very, very helpful to me. But one of the things that I know we mentioned was looking at, you know, attracting not just residents, but also businesses to the area, because, you know, one of the reasons we all live in Glendora is it's charming, it's beautiful, it's nice and quiet, but it also has things that we want, right? It has restaurants, it has stores, it has those kinds of things. And when you look particularly on Arrow Highway, when you look not just on Arrow Highway, but on Arrow Highway, on Route 66, there's a lot of vacant lots. There's a lot of lots that are in need of redevelopment. And we're talking about residential tonight, but I think one of the things I learned at that meeting that I think would be helpful for the public to know is the relationship between having more residential units and having desirable businesses that we want come into the community. For example, if I have a grocery store that I want to open, or if I have a particular restaurant that I want to open in the city, what am I looking for? So I found that conversation very helpful, and I think the public might as well.
No, I think that's a really good point. One of the other concern, not only, you know, development, commercial versus residential, it's sort of a chicken or the egg, you know, situation. And I also heard concerns about the impact on schools, you know, and I'm a product of Charter Oak Schools. And I can tell you that my elementary school, my middle school, and my high school are all closed. And the reason is that Charter Oak and Glendora over the past couple decades has been experiencing declining enrollment.
Yes.
And that can be directly attributed to, you know, changing demographics, but also limited housing supply for younger people who are raising families.
And just so you know, my background, as you know, is 30 years in education. And I can definitely tell you pretty much every school district in the area is experiencing declining enrollment, including Glendora. So yeah, I think I see your point about the school districts. Yeah. But what I wanted to talk about, or to have you bring up, was, you know, if we want businesses, if we want nice restaurants, what are they looking for when they come into a city? And why maybe are we not getting some of those businesses that we might want now?
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for, you know, one, they're looking for sites. You know, you have to have adequate sites for, let's say, whether you want a restaurant or a nicer grocery store to go into. You know, they also want to see that a community is growing and developing. In the last few years, the city of Glendora has had stagnant, if not declining, population during the COVID period. You know, we lost population according to the State Department of Finance. We, declined in our size. Also is good geography. Glendora is a very nice community, but, we're back up against the foothills. The best thing we have going for us from a geographic perspective is the intersection of the 210 and 57 with all those cars passing through our area. So they want to, see sites, they want to see growth, and they want to see a good location, not necessarily in that order, but that's what commercial investors are looking for.
Thank you. I just I did not know if the public was aware of that. It was something that was very, that I learned at that meeting that, yes, we want to keep our community quiet and peaceful and beautiful and charming like it is now. But if we want to have, growth and businesses and things, we do need to continue to grow and to thrive. And so I think that was my own, oh yes, and I second your point about the school districts. Absolutely. Somebody mentioned the school district, like you said, they're all having declining enrollment and throughout the state actually. And I think, looking at possibly bringing in new students, they might even be able to, who knows, have more, even maybe, reopen schools. I can't speak for them, but who knows? I think that was it for my questions. Does anybody else have any additional comments? You have one more? Okay.
I just want to make sure we address as many of the questions and concerns that came across tonight. One speaker mentioned for sale or rental. I don't know if you staff can speak to that. A developer is probably going to sell whatever they build and then it becomes a rental. So sale or rental is a little ambiguous. So any experience you have in terms of sale or rental?
Sure. And I think that was related to the affordable housing question in particular. So there are affordable housing developments that hit those income categories that are both, for sale and for rent. It's not one or the other. The city cannot, express a preference or have a requirement in its code that the housing that's developed be rental or for sale. So that's up to the investor who comes in. What we're
That would be considered subjective.
yeah, well, that's an objective standard. The objective standard is that we cannot dictate. Whether it's rented or owned. I understand, because, Glendora, and Charter Oak, the whole area sort of it primarily developed when, you transition from an agricultural area to the suburbs as communities of, single family homes that were primarily owned and occupied. And so some of the housing we're seeing built now, it's, some of it's rental. That has a place in the market, especially with ownership housing, the single family homes being so expensive, particularly for households that, may earn less than $100,000 a year. Every time I look on Redfin and, whether, anything, single family homes are at least in the $600,000-700,000 range. And so that excludes a lot of people from the market who want to live here. And so some of the homes that will be built will probably be rental housing based on the needs of the market.
Anyone else? No? Okay. At this time, I'm going to close public hearing and request a motion. Want me to read the recommendation now or wait till after the motion? Oh, go ahead.
We can do the announce the motion and then read the recommendation.
Okay. So a motion to approve to open and conduct the public hearing, accept the evidence and testimony presented, and in the absence of substantial testimony to the contrary, recommend that the city council consider the following. Find and determine that the ordinance is consistent with the initial study and negative declaration prepared for the adopted general plan housing element in compliance with California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA. adopt a city council ordinance entitled An Ordinance of the City Council of the City of Glendora, California, amending chapter 21.10 of the Route 66 Corridor Specific Plan, Table 6.2 of Section 2110-350, zoning subdistrict development standards, rezoning certain parcels from Route 66 GLG to Route 66 TCMU, and amending Chapter 2114 Arrow Highway Specific Plan, Section 23.1, Land Use Zones Overview to increase housing density and establish minimum residential densities, and to revise Section 21.3.130.1 of the Municipal Code to acquire ministerial approval for certain affordable housing developments in order to implement the sixth RENA cycle 2021-2029 General Plan Housing Element Project PLN 230003. Did y'all get all that? Okay. At this time, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have Commissioner Davis made the motion and seconded by Chair Koss. I will now open it for vote. And I will do vote by oral roll call. Commissioner Becerra,
Yes.
Commissioner Davis,
Yes.
Commissioner Faber is absent. Vice Chair Norwood,
Yes.
Chair Koss.
Yes.
Let the motion carries 4-0 with one absent.
Okay, thank you. So now we're going to look at our consent calendar. Items on the consent calendar will be enacted by one motion without individual discussion unless a commissioner has requested it be removed for separate discussion. Does anyone wish to comment on item number 3 or 4? No? Okay. I request a motion and a second to approve consent calendar item 3, 4 as presented.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Thank you. A motion was made by Commissioner Davis and seconded by Commissioner Becerra. I will now do an oral roll call. Commissioner Becerra,
Yes.
Commissioner Davis,
Yes.
Vice Chair Norwood,
Yes.
Chair Koss.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0 with one absent.
Okay. So that was item 3 and 4. Okay. So at this point, I would like to make invite Jeff, I said you had a couple of comments to make.
Sure. I just wanted to remind the commission that the next regularly scheduled meeting falls on July 4th.
Oh.
So that meeting has been canceled, and the planning commission reminder, we'll hold a special meeting on July 18th. I also wanted to say thank you to Commissioner Becerra. This is her last meeting with us serving on the commission. And the past few years I've enjoyed having her on the commission, her contributions to all of the meetings and issues and applications that have came before the commission. And so we wish her well as she finds something else to do the first Tuesday of every month.
Okay, great. All right. So at this time, I will invite commissioners to make closing statements. Commissioner Davis.
Are we closing? Don't we have,
We did that. 3 and 4.
got it. No, I have nothing at this time. Thank you. Just thank you folks for coming out and expressing your views and your concerns. It's a no-win situation, really. It's Mayberry will cease to be Mayberry as we know it. Unfortunately, that's dictated from the top down, unfortunately.
It can still be Mayberry, just different Mayberry.
Mayberry will look different. Let me put it
Yes.
that way.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Becerra.
Yes, I would like to thank everybody for their participation here tonight and every month that I've been here. It's been a pleasure to serve the city of Glendora. And I'm just moving on for my grandkids because they're really busy on the first Tuesday of every month. So that's what's going to keep me busy. And again, thank you very much. I appreciate everybody's participation. Glendora is a beautiful city and we have to work together and continue to fight hard to make it. Well, I don't think it's going to stay the same. Nothing ever stays the same, but keep it friendly and wonderful.
Okay, Vice Chair Norwood?
I just also too want to thank the public for coming out today and expressing their concerns. And I wish Commissioner Becerra all the best in the world and enjoy your grandkids the first Tuesday of every month.
And I also want to say, I'm really pleased to see this many people at a meeting like this and get your input. Being on the Planning Commission is a labor of love. We're here because we love the city and you're here because you love the city. And we all want it to stay as wonderful as it is, but we also want it to thrive and grow. And sometimes that involves making some really tough choices, but I appreciate hearing everybody's viewpoint tonight. And I really encourage you to stay involved in your city. I think it can still be Mayberry. It just might look a little different, Mayberry. I also would like to thank Commissioner Becerra. I think you've made a great contribution to the commission and your contribution will remain here even after you're gone. So have fun with your grandkids and I'm sure you'll have, soccer games or whatever it is on Tuesday night. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, then we are adjourned at 8:17 p.m.